In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
But I do ask every publisher, every editor, and every newsman in the nation to re-examine his own standards and to recognize the nature of our country's peril. In time of war, the government and the press have customarily joined in an effort based largely on self-discipline to prevent unauthorized disclosures to the enemy. In times of clear and present danger, the courts have held that even the privileged rights of the First Amendment must yield to the public's need for national security. Today, no war has been declared, and however fierce the struggle may be, it may never be declared in the traditional fashion. Our way of life is under attack. Those who make themselves our enemy are advancing around the globe. The survival of our friends is in danger, and yet no war has been declared. No borders have been crossed by marching troops. No missiles have been fired. If the press is awaiting a declaration of war before it imposes the self-discipline of combat conditions, then I can only say that no war ever posed a greater threat to our security. If you are awaiting a finding of clear and present danger, then I can only say that the danger has never been more clear, and its presence has never been more imminent.
It's time to recognize that we've come to a turning point. We're threatened with an economic calamity of tremendous proportions, and the old business-as-usual treatment can't save us. Together, we must chart a different course. We must increase productivity. That means making it possible for industry to modernize and make use of the technology which we ourselves invented. That means putting Americans back to work, and that means, above all, bringing government spending back within government revenues, which is the only way, together with increased productivity, that we can reduce and, yes, eliminate inflation.
The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you. The only force strong enough to save our country is us. The only people brave enough to vote out this corrupt establishment is you, the American people. I'm doing this for the people and for the movement, and we will take back this country for you, and we will make America great again.
Hello, welcome to Inform America. My name is Rich Merritt, your host. Before we get started on today's show, I just want to briefly mention the nationallibertyalliance.org. Please go there and help them out, either financially or with your time, whichever you can afford to do. But they are making an honest effort at trying to restore the rule of law in this country, which is sadly needed. Also, check out the Boston Broadside. I happen to think it's called the People's Paper. It's the People's Paper for a reason. They tell the truth. They have some integrity and honesty in their news reporting. So check them out and support them. It's about time we get behind some organizations that are trying to help us understand. So do that. Thirdly, I'd like to ask people to support me by going after my book, Stand Your Ground. You can find it on Amazon. Hopefully there'll be a flyer up there at the end of the show today, and you can go to the website, check it out then. We're going to show 4 videos, and basically I want to see if you can see what the basic context of it is. It's the same as the first 4 presidents that talked. That's a hint. We'll show those 4 videos back to back, and then we'll come back and talk about it for a minute or so.
A part of that plan, of course, is to induce the gradual surrender of American sovereignty, piece by piece and step by step, to various international organizations, of which the United Nations is the outstanding but far from the only example. Now, here are the aims for the United States. 1, greatly expanded government spending for every conceivable means of getting rid of ever larger sums of American money as wastefully as possible. 2, higher and then much higher taxes. 3, an increasingly unbalanced budget despite the higher taxes. 4, wild inflation of our currency. 5, government controls of prices, wages, and materials, supposedly to combat inflation. 6, greatly increased socialistic controls over every operation of our economy and every activity of our daily lives. This is to be accompanied naturally and automatically by a correspondingly huge increase in the size of our bureaucracy and in both the cost and reach of our domestic government. 7, far more centralization of power in Washington and the practical elimination of our state lines. There is a many-faceted drive at work to have our state lines eventually mean no more within the nation than our county lines do now within the states. 8, the steady advance of federal aid to and control over our educational system, leading to complete federalization of our public education. 9, a constant hammering into the American consciousness of the horror of modern warfare, the beauties and the absolute necessity of peace. Peace always on communist terms, of course. And 10, the consequent willingness of the American people to allow the steps of appeasement by our government which amount to a piecemeal surrender of the rest of the free world and of the United States itself. So brush the insider's dust out of your eyes, my friends, and the communist soap suds out of your brain, and ask yourselves in all honesty, what on earth is wrong with the United States simply minding its own business? Or with having its foreign policy function primarily for the safety and benefit of the American people. Which is exactly what we had done for the first 140 years of our existence as a nation, to the incredible advantage of ourselves and everybody else. Everybody, that is, except a numerically small clique of power-lusting conspirators who had somehow inflicted themselves on a gullible world. While we turn to a very brief summarization of what we hope the John Birch Society will help and even sometimes lead the American people to accomplish during the next 15 years. 1, our first and most important specific undertaking should be to restore the complete independence of the United States. This includes our resolution to get us out of the United Nations and get the United Nations out of the United States. Two, we must once again make our money freely redeemable in gold at some realistic price. And we must take all practicable legislative steps to prevent a recurrence of the enormous thievery and other subversive crimes that have been perpetrated on the American people through a contrived inflation by every president from Franklin Roosevelt through Richard Nixon. 3, we should reduce the number of government bureaus, of government civilian employees, and the whole quantity of government by at least 50%. And we should achieve at least this much reduction in proper fashion through gradually convincing a majority of the American people of the wisdom of such a course. 4, we should withdraw all American troops from every spot on earth that is not American soil, except when and where such troops may be required as decided by Congress to protect American lives and property from criminal vandalism. 5, we should get government out of the areas and functions and activities where government does not belong. Again, all steps to this end should be taken gradually. But nevertheless, the filmed version of this speech, in 1,000 other audiences, it is with a great deal of confidence and energizing will to win that we invite you to join us in our epic undertaking. While to all of you great, wonderful friends in this present audience, I certainly extend my very deep thanks indeed for so much patience and attention. Thank you and good night.
Mr. Payne, is it true you have been summoned to the White House because the President is angry over your remarks? If so, please don't be intimidated, sir. Have no fear, my friend, I assure you. Although I respect the office of the presidency, I would bow to no man. No, it's not true I've been summoned. But if I were, this is what I would say to the President of the United States of America. Mr. President, our founding fathers are turning over in their graves. There are no bombs falling on our city, no large enemy armies at our gates, but we are facing a disaster of monumental proportions, exceeding the tragedies of all former calamities combined. We face the end of America. Our representative democracy is dead, replaced by a swampland of party politics, ignoring the will of the people, playing games with the future of our children, bailing out failure and taxing success. Traitors and cowards in elective office, seeking only to appease advocacy groups and ethnic interests who promise to deliver the most amount of votes at the next election. Let us not be fooled, sir, that a failed economy is the central issue. It is not. The economy will rebound, but the issue is how much more dependent on government to satisfy your every need will we be when it returns? And can a nation that no longer teaches the principles of our founding fathers, lest they offend some special interest, ever regain its soul? Please, sir, look beyond the economy of numbers at the causes that are eroding our national unity. Our citizens are being buried alive in burdens never authorized by our Constitution and our founding documents. The corruption of the judiciary, with judges now dependent on the will of political parties. Our sons and daughters subjected to death and bodily injury in foreign countries without a formal declaration of war, which would ensure they go to battle with the full support of we the people, and not the whim of spineless leaders in Congress, advocating cutting their funds and playing politics with their lives. Have we not learned, sir, America cannot accomplish the mission without we, the people, being an equal partner in the fight? A military asked to win those wars, but condemned for collateral damage, lest we be criticized by countries who either work against democracy's interest or refuse to fight for themselves. The heart and soul of our economy, small businesses, paralyzed by government regulation and control over every aspect of their existence. The average citizen working the first 6 months of the year just to pay taxes that support welfare programs and handouts to foreign nationals never authorized by our Constitution, overburdened by a tax code 7 times larger than the Bible and understood by no one. I understand, sir, your passionate declarations that we all must be good global citizens. But respectfully, sir, you were not elected the president of the globe. You were elected president of the United States. The globe has not provided you a treasury to solve their problems. We, the neglected people of America, pay your salary and provide the funds to support our interests first. If your house is on fire and your wife and children are in danger, would there be any question as to where your immediate allegiance should be? Is it not common sense to put your nose to the American grindstone first? And remember, sir, we're broke. You don't want more complaints. You want solutions. How do we stop this endless slide to the end? I have no idea. I'm not a politician. I represent no party or no idea other than a return to common sense and reason. But I do know, sir, you will become the greatest president in our history if you have the guts to do what few politicians today even dream of. Choose the harder right, turning your back on your political handlers and those who would dismantle our country's history, traditions, and values over the easier wrong of bowing and apologizing for America's mistakes. And stand up and inspire us all with the respect that is obvious. We are Americans, the most generous people in the history of the world, with the DNA of past generations who willingly sacrificed their treasure, their lives, their future to make the world free. We ask for nothing in return, not land, not servitude, not glory. That history needs to bow to no political gain. That history needs no apology, sir. And may you never mislabel gratitude and pride in country as politically incorrect arrogance and extremism. I know, sir, you are very concerned with criticism that America is not a very good global partner. Perhaps, sir, it's time you should remind our critics. Americans were the first people to shed their blood fighting for global freedom. There would be no possibility of globalization if it were not for the contributions of the United States of America. Secure your greatness, sir. Stand in front of we the people and declare the end of the self-destructive welfare state, sanctifying every person with a problem as a victim. Remind our country we were built and preserved by people who refuse to be victims. Hand up, not handouts. Declare what every citizen with common sense understands. There can be no bipartisanship if you stand in the cesspool of divisive politics and policies. Lady Liberty is mortally wounded, and the only hope this nation has to find bipartisan strength in action is to raise the debate to our founding principles of self-reliance, personal responsibility, and the vigilance to ensure government remains our servants and not our masters. If we need lawyers and judges and the ACLU to tell us what those principles are, then we have lost our common sense and we have lost our country. Forbid it, Almighty God! It's time for all of us to earn what we have been taking for granted too long. It's time for all of us to earn the right to be an American. Stop shaking your heads, moaning you can't fight City Hall, and realize we are City Hall. God bless our country, and may God give you, sir, the strength and the wisdom to turn away from your apology tours and stand up for America. It's the right thing to do, sir. My name is Thomas Paine. Semper Fi, Mr. President. Semper Fi.
I had a dream the other night. I didn't understand. A figure walking through the mist with a rifle in his hand. His clothes were torn and dirty as he stood there by the bed. He took off his three-cornered hat and, speaking low, he said,
"We fought a revolution to secure your liberty. We wrote the Constitution as a shield from tyranny. For future generations, this legacy we gave to make you the land of the free and home of the brave. The freedoms we secured for you, we thought you'd always keep. But tyrants labor endlessly while your parents were asleep. Now your freedom's gone. Your courage is lost. You're no more than a slave in your land of the free and home of the brave. You buy permits to travel, permits to own a gun, permits to start a business or build a place for one. On land you think you own, you pay your yearly rent. But you don't have a voice in saying how that money's spent. Now your children attend a school that doesn't educate, and your Christian values can't be taught according to the state. You read about your current news in a regulated press and pay more taxes than you owe to that thing called IRS. Your money's no longer made of silver or gold. You trade your wealth for paper so your life can be controlled. And you pay for crimes that make your nation turn from God in shame. And now you've taken Satan's number and traded in your name. You give your government control to those who could do you harm. so they could padlock churches and steal the family farm and keep the nation deep in debt while putting men of faith in jail, and then harass your fellow countrymen while your corrupt courts prevail? Your public servants don't uphold the solemn oaths they've sworn, and now your daughters visit doctors so their children won't be born. You send guns and artillery to foreign shore, and then you send your youth to slaughter fighting other people's wars. Could you regain the freedoms for which we fought and died, or have you lost your courage and your faith to stand with pride?
Are there no more values for which you fight to save?
Or do you wish your children to live in fear and be a slave? Then, people of this republic, it's time to rise and take a stand. Defend the Constitution, the supreme law of your land. Preserve your great republic and every God-given right. And let us pray to God to keep that torch of freedom burning bright.
As I awoke, he vanished. In the mist from which he came, his words were true. We are not free. We have ourselves to blame. For even now, as tyrants trample each God-given right, we only watch and tremble, too afraid to stand and fight. If he stood by your bedside in a dream while you're asleep and wondered what remains of our rights he fought to keep, what would be your answer if he called out from the grave, "Is this still the land of the free and the home of the brave?"
Officer opening fire on a man running away.
Later, another shooting was reported at a Paris shopping mall.
ISIS is again threatening the U.S.
Morning again, George, and he claims no drugs right now, but we did talk a lot about his past drug use.
If I were the devil, if I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness. And I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree, thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions, just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing. Paul Harvey. Good day.
All right, all those people warning us about what is going to happen. And surer than scat, it's happened. Thomas Jefferson said, if the people fear the government, there is tyranny. If the government fears the people, there is liberty. I choose liberty. They can keep their tyranny. I have some suggestions for you because it's easy to rattle on about the problems that we face in the country, but I want to make some suggestions to you. It's my contention that because we consent to what is going on, that's why we're in the predicament we're in. And we acquiesce to their jurisdiction when they don't have any jurisdiction over us. So I wanted to make it kind of clear that, for example, why do you pay a tax on your paycheck for your time and your labor, your wages and compensation, when there is no tax, no lawful means for you to do that? There's no law compelling you to pay that tax, but we pay it because we're fearful of the government. It's time to get over the fear. It's my suggestion anyway. Secondly, I'd like to say, since the bank is, in my mind, second as far as public enemy number 2, right behind ignorance, why do we have all types of credit cards? 2 credit cards, 5 credit cards, 10 credit cards? Why do we go in debt from almost from the cradle to the grave? You know, you get out of high school, you look at college. Everybody has to go to college now, and colleges are outrageous, the expenses of them. So you got to take that. Then you get married, another expense with weddings and whatnot. Bringing on children, everything is an expense, and everybody's encouraging you to get credit. Credit. Why not change things? Our money's useless. There is nothing back. They did away with the gold. They did away with the silver. There's nothing backing that Federal Reserve note. And the fact that the Federal Reserve Bank is privately owned, all the money that they take out of your paycheck goes to them. Roosevelt, the Rockefellers, I don't know, the Rothschilds, all of them. It was started 70, 80, 90 years ago. They're making money off us. If you stop feeding the machine will stop growing, and it'll shrink. It'll go the other way. My suggestion to you is to take advantage of that. The world you came into was created by people who benefit from you being here. It's not for your benefit, just for them to benefit for. Change your environment. You had no say in the matter. You just born into it. My advice is that you change that. 30 seconds. I'd like to go with subscribing to the YouTube channel Inform America. Please go to Facebook and like us. Check out our website, inform-america.org. And with that, please share this. I think it's extremely important. You may disagree, but please share it. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.